Okay, this one's going to take a little bit. I know. You're sick of hearing about voting and elections. I get it, I do. Just hear me out. Winston Churchill once said that democracy is the worst form of government, except all others that have been tried. But of course he also said the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. So take from that what you will. I understand that democracy is about more than just voting, but it is not an insignificant part. In the last video, I discussed activism. Now, not always, but often, what activists are trying to do is change the laws. Martin Luther King and his fellow activists pushed legislators to pass the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Now, these pieces of legislation were not the be-all and end-all of the civil rights movement, but again, they were not an insignificant part. When we vote, we can get good people into office that represent us and our values. Government doesn't have to be a corrupt, inefficient bureaucracy that is trying to control our lives that many people view it as. It can be an instrument of good. You might be saying, I don't know who the good politicians are, and I don't have time to look into them to find out. And besides, you know they're all corrupt anyway. They're just looking out for themselves and their rich friends. You see that last bit there? That's cynicism rearing its head. It's easy to stand back and say, they're all crooks and liars. But I truly believe when you elect the right people, good things can get done. They may have their faults, as we all do, but there are good people out there trying to do the right thing and working to make people's lives better. Are you upset about big money in politics? Well, there are people right now working on getting money out of politics. It's up to us to seek those people out and support them when they run for public office. Not participating in the system does not change the system. If you want to change the system without resorting to some sort of violent revolution, voting is an important step to doing that. If you don't vote, those in power won't hear your voice. I lived in Idaho for years, and I don't think I once voted for anyone who actually won an election in Idaho. I didn't let it discourage me though. My vote was a message. It was a message to the winning candidates that not everybody here agrees with you, and it was a message to all the other voters who also disagreed with those candidates that you are not alone. You might be saying, see, your vote didn't matter. Nobody you voted for won, so nothing changed. Except if everybody who was eligible to vote voted, it could change the outcome of countless elections. Do you think Congress has nothing to offer except partisan bickering and gridlock? Well, every 2 years, 435 members of the U.S. House and at least 33 out of 100 senators are up for re-election, and we have a chance to kick them out. Don't like your choices in the general election? Well, you might have better ones in the primaries, but you have to vote in the primaries to get those better choices. The percentage of eligible voters who vote in the primaries is usually less than 30%, sometimes significantly less. Maybe you think that the political establishment prevents the candidates that you would support from winning in the primaries. But remember, in 2008, Hillary Clinton was the establishment candidate and Barack Obama was the upstart candidate. And yet, he was able to overcome the establishment. It can happen if enough people vote. It's not always perfect, but don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Okay, one last bit before I wrap it up. In 2000, George W. Bush won Florida by less than 600 votes, thus winning the election. It wouldn't surprise me if some people are yelling at their screen now, saying Al Gore won the popular vote and should have won the election, or maybe even that George W. Bush stole the election in Florida and thus the presidency. I'm not interested in arguing the merits of the Electoral College, so I'm going to set the first one aside. As for the second, independent recounts done after the official results were certified have shown varying results. Some showing Gore winning, some showing Bush winning. depending on how the votes were counted. I'm going to set that one aside for now as well. I'm also not interested in getting into the Ralph Nader discussion either. If you're curious, Google Ralph Nader Florida 2000 and feel free to dive into that rabbit hole. What I am interested in is discussing the official vote total, which says that George W. Bush won by 537 votes. So if just 600 more people in Florida had voted for Al Gore, he would have won the presidency. Now, I don't believe that if Al Gore was president, the 9/11 attacks wouldn't have happened. Maybe, but it seems more likely that the attacks would have happened no matter who was president. And if the 9/11 attacks had happened with Al Gore as president, I think we probably still would have ended up going to war in Afghanistan. Whether that decision was a correct one or not is a discussion for another time. Here's my point though. If Al Gore had won the election in 2000, I think I can almost 100% guarantee we would have not gone to war in Iraq. Again, whether you think that was necessary or not is not what I'm discussing here. In the war in Iraq, over 4,000 members of the United States Armed Forces died. How many of those people would be alive today if 600 people in Florida had voted for Al Gore in 2000? Now again, I want to emphasize, whether you think the war in Iraq was necessary or not is not the point that I'm trying to make here. My point is there are consequences to elections. I want you to think about that next time you hear somebody say it doesn't matter who you vote for and that all politicians are the same. Elections have consequences that have a real effect on people's lives, whether it's war, whether it's gun control, whether it's marriage equality, whether it's a woman's right to choose, whether it's environmental protection. Elections matter. Don't let all the sideshow BS of the election season get in the way of you seeing that. Voting does make a difference. Is it the most important thing? Probably not, but it is important. And you can tell it's important because people have literally died fighting for the right to vote, for your right and mine. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said, "The most important office is that of the private citizen." So please, take a little time to inform yourself and vote. And I don't just mean voting for the president every 4 years. I mean primaries, down-ballot elections, midterm elections, off-year elections. I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, whether you want to vote for a Democrat or Republican or vote for a third-party candidate. That's up to you. I'm just here to tell you, please, 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 vote.